1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Welcome to another episode of The Modern Moron. Game of Thrones? I say Game of Jones. It's old news that people need a replacement for that monumental show. Granted, there is a prequel. It's called House of Dragons, which takes place thousands of years before the Game of Thrones took place. Which means exactly what? Their swords don't get Wi-Fi? House of Dragons is due out in 2022. 2022. What are we supposed to do till then? Read a book? Fans of the show need something now. And what's going to be its replacement? I'm sure there are more, but a couple of shows that are vying for the throne are The Mandalorian on Disney+. I don't have Disney Plus yet. And The Witcher on Netflix. I did try to watch the first episode of The Witcher just to see what's up. More importantly, I asked my OP to take a look at the first episode to see what she thinks as a diehard Game of Thrones fan. We discussed The Witcher, its British star Henry Cavill, who also played the latest Superman and is pretty easy on the eyes according to my OP. We talk up the latest Star Wars film, which is now months old, and that we are both big fans of Adam Driver, who was fantastic last year in Spike Lee's Black Klansman, and this year he's up for an Oscar in his performance in Marriage Story on Netflix, which I cannot bring myself to watch because it just seems too heartbreaking. Oh yeah, the rendition of the Game of Thrones theme you're hearing in the background is from the folks at Fender Guitars. They pulled together Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, Scott Ian from Anthrax, Nuno Betancourt from Extreme, the composer of the show's theme, Ramin Djawadi, I hope I got that right, and the show's creator Dan Wheel, and even country star Brad Paisley. And if you think Brad Paisley can't rock out on a Fender Telecaster, this will prove you wrong. A link to the video is at the bottom. We're searching to fill your Jones for Game of Thrones on this episode of The Modern Moron. And thank you for listening. I had read an article about two big shows, one on Netflix, one on Disney+. Disney Plus has The Mandalorian, which I'm hearing all kinds of raves about. And then Netflix has this show called Wticher. Mm-hmm. And I think Witcher is more medievally. I feel like it's Netflix attempt, maybe desperate attempt to try and suck in all those poor Game of Thrones folks that are jonesing for something, which made me think of you. Did you watch the first episode?
I watched the first episode.
And did it even come close to fulfilling your Jones for Game of Thrones?
Nothing will ever be Game of Thrones.
Okay, given that, did it do anything for you?
I watched it with that in mind, like trying to be fair. You know, the standard of Game of Thrones to me, as a passionate fan, I understand how high it is. But Henry Cavill, oh my God. Henry Cavill as an actor, and he was in Tudors, which I also loved, because I'm an Anglophile. I'm like this historical nerd.
Oh, I like England.
And he was in the Tudors, which was about Henry VIII and all that stuff. And he's Superman. I think he's very underrated. The fact that they were able to get him for that show, for The Witcher, is huge because you need that kind of cornerstone. And he's great. So the acting is good. Because people think, oh, hunky Henry. No, he's a great actor. The acting is terrific. They are clearly trying to get the Game of Thrones audience, which is fair and smart. I think the mistake they're making is you either have to be subtly and do asides, sort of tongue in cheek, and acknowledge in subtle ways that, hey, yeah, we know this is a Game of Thrones thing. You can't just specifically rip them off. I think they're kind of torn somewhere in the middle. It shows a lot of potential. For me as a Game of Thrones freak and a medieval person and a Renaissance fair and all that stuff, they've got a lot of potential. And I hate to say that because some people that might be listening to this have seen other episodes, but seeing just the first one, another thing is that these days they try to pack so much into an hour. And
right.
One thing Game of Thrones did that was great, that turned a lot of people off, was in the first episode, they rolled it out majestically, slowly, dramatically and perfect
Mm-hmm.
with very high production values. This one tries to make it just bam, 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 all these things going on, and you can't keep track.
That is some of the criticisms that I have read.
Woo, I'm a critic. Woo!
This is from Time Magazine, just a little blurb. All of this exposition would make for a tough to-do list under the best of circumstances.
Right.
But The Witcher heightens our confusion by fumbling details that would have helped it set a cohesive tone.
Yes.
Yeah, there was so much going on, and Cahill, he was talking like this the whole time.
Yeah, which is how
I had come over the lands of Nordor to see the Rimblacks.
you sound just like.
I know, but this is all he did. Okay, I get it. You've had a shitty life. You were born out of a dragon's asshole. And you've had your parents slayed, and you're tough as nails. I get it. But I did see some of the humor trying to leak out. And then in that first episode, there was some kind of a ball or not a ball. They didn't have that in the medieval times. But they were at a banquet of some sort, and people were dancing.
Yeah.
And then this guy comes walking up. Do you remember that part? He comes up with his son, and the son wants to ask the princess to dance.
Yep.
And the father is groomed so perfectly. I'm like, where did you get your haircut? Supercuts? And then you walked onto the set? And then I was half expecting a Bud Light commercial.
Bit of misery, dilly dilly.
I just couldn't get there. And I think it's what you said. Game of Thrones took its time. And I think The Witcher was trying to do everything for you all at once in one episode to get you hooked.
And this was actually a problem with Game of Thrones. And I had this from the very first episode for years. It's amazing to think that you talk about years when you're talking about a show.
Uh-huh.
But there are some of us who just have a hard time getting over the supernatural stuff to begin with. And sometimes the supernatural stuff, and you have to also consider special effects and stuff, how effective that is. It doesn't jibe with the plot and the characters and the background. It's really a hard thing to do to make that magical ball or the dragons or whatever else, zombies, and make it feel like it works in that world.
Do you think it's because it's not on the big screen? Do you think they're relying too heavily on special effects and not enough on story and character development?
In this case, yes. And sometimes in Game of Thrones, yes. But Game of Thrones had the budget. I mean, $10 million, what, an episode?
Was it really? Holy shit.
I didn't get HBO. I'd never had HBO until a friend of mine lent me the box set of the first season of Game of Thrones. And I got HBO and would never look back because they thought the great shows and they put money into it. But it's, nobody can afford $10 million an episode.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm probably wrong about that $10 million episode, but I think I might be right. Anyway, I'm not a fantasy fan in general.
Oh, you're not normally. So Game of Thrones had you, and that's a unique situation for you.
They made me like zombies. They made me like dragons.
There are zombies in Game of Thrones?
Yeah. And that was like my least favorite part. I tried to read and do Lord of the Rings. I just, no. But it's hard to put that stuff into a narrative that makes sense to you. And
because there are no such thing as zombies.
Every nerd friend I have is going to hate me right now, but it's true. I just don't care about freaking zombies.
Have you seen Zombieland?
No, I don't watch zombie shows. I don't care about them.
You might like. I encourage you to see Zombieland.
Okay,
it's kind of a spoof. Well, it did well enough to have a sequel that came out within the last year. But see the first one.
Yes,
Bill Murray's in it. It's worth watching it just to see Bill Murray in Zombieland.
God damn it, Bill Murray!
The spoof, the tongue-in-cheek, and that's why I started off as like, you know what? If you don't take yourself too seriously and you kind of showcase the joke and make it smart, it's awesome.
That's what Zombieland is. It tells you the rules of how to deal with zombies. Like you have to shoot them here. You have to shoot them this way. You have to shoot them twice. You can't just leave them with one. There's a bunch of rules. And Woody Harrelson's great in it. The whole movie's great. I would suggest that. Yeah.
Perfect.
I think also with The Witcher, because it's based on a book as well, or a series of books,
Yes.
that the fans of the book are not crazy about the show, I think.
Really?
I'm trying to, what do fans of the Witcher book series think of the video game?
Uh-huh. Oh, there's a video game too?
Oh, yeah. There was the books and the video game before the show.
I never even heard of The Witcher until we were texting today. I had no clue.
The only reason I knew about it is Netflix was pushing it pretty hard.
Uh-huh.
And I saw that article comparing The Witcher to The Mandalorian. And I don't have Disney Plus, but I'm a Star Wars nerd. So I thought, well, maybe I should check out The Witcher. But I watched it and I just couldn't suspend my disbelief
Okay.
for long enough to get into the show.
Can we talk about the latest Star Wars then?
Sure.
Because I just saw it.
Okay.
And I'm a Star Wars nerd.
You are.
Oh, yeah. What did you think of Star Wars, the final chapter, allegedly?
I enjoyed it. The only point that I didn't care for, I guess, was at the end, they're having that huge battle. And all of a sudden, I'm seeing everybody's running around having hand-to-hand combat on the surface of a destroyer.
Mhm.
I'm like, since fucking when does... Isn't there no atmosphere in space and everybody's walking around like they're on a boat? Like, okay, let's have a sword fight right here on the deck of the ship outside where there's no atmosphere. Is that too ticky-tack?
Yeah, it required an enormous suspension of disbelief. But I've always been good at that.
You were okay with that?
I was fine with the entire movie.
You were?
Yeah, because
I liked it. I mean, I'm a Star Wars nerd. I liked
I
it.
loved it. But
Yeah.
anybody who's not ready for Star Wars to disappoint us, especially when they switch directors from time to time, I just want them to not suck. If they suck, my heart's going to be broken. So I think I go in with such low expectations, especially after.
Squeeze me.
Well, since Jar Jar Binks, I
Right.
mean, there's no way to go but up.
It's embarrassing.
I think that's one of the best things that ever happened to the franchise when it comes to the people that make money off of it, is that now if you come out and make us happy and show us the characters we love and make them not take a dump on the set, we're happy. That's me. I appreciate it. And I think that the reintroduction of everything with the new actors and actresses was great. So, no, I was good. It was big. The special effects were awesome. It made me feel good. Do I have to suspend disbelief for however long the movie lasts? Fine. I'm good with that. But you know what? The Carrie Fisher stuff creeped me out.
Why is that?
Because we all know she died. We all know that
Mhm.
it's extra footage,
Mm-hmm.
and it looked very like computer generated from a dead person. But this is very personally me.
Well, that's because it was.
I know, right? But we all know that. It was just creepy to me. But that's just a minor thing.
You know what part I really loved was when one of the Death Stars it looked like it had crashed into an ocean.
Uh-huh.
And the skeleton of it was sticking up out of the water and the waves were huge. I thought that was kind of cool. I don't know, just that set design,
Yes.
the scenes that took place out there. There was a final sort of face-off between Harrison Ford and Adam Driver.
Mhm.
I thought was really good.
That was my favorite part of the movie, and my favorite set scene, that ocean thing. And I'm
Yeah.
a big fan of like fantasy special effects, all this stuff, unless you are amazing. That ocean thing with the giant waves mixed with
Yeah.
those two guys was killer.
Yeah, I really like that sequence out there. And Adam Driver, he's something else. I really think he's a pretty great actor.
Yeah, me too.
He was a Marine.
No, I know nothing about him. Tell me more.
Well, I don't know that much about him, but if you go to YouTube, which is what I'm constantly doing, Adam Driver TED Talk. Adam Driver TED Talk.
I know nothing about him. My daughter's fascinated with him, and a lot of 15-year-old girls are. But I've been shocked at that because to me, it's like this guy is not this conventionally handsome guy, but there's something he's got. He
Yes. He's nominated for Marriage Story, which I don't want to watch because I just don't feel like having my heart broken watching a marriage end. and it features Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson. I just think he's a great actor, and he's very real. Did you see Black Klansman last year?
I haven't seen shit, dude.
Oh, that came out last year. You should. It's a great film.
96% on Rotten Tomatoes means the critics loved it, but 91% of viewers liked the movie. Because it's always interesting to look at the balance between how many critics liked it
Yes.
versus how many peeps liked it. So that's funny.
Which goes back to The Witcher.
Yeah.
So for The Witcher, 65% on the critics' reviews, 93% audience score.
93% audience score is, I think, a lot of the people that are in the audience that were willing to watch it were people that were predisposed to like it in the first place.
Oh.
I think I'm going to love it.
You think you're going to love what? The Witcher?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. Now, it has problems, but it's got what I'm looking for, and I'm willing to look past all the zombie shit. But because of there's the castles and historical parallels, and their dialogue can get better, and I suspect it probably does. So, no.
Didn't your daughter say that there are a lot of orgies in The Witcher?
As soon as you sent me that text, I said, hey, do you know The Witcher? And she said, I think that's the one with all the orgies. I know she never watched it, but I mean, she might have, but she'd have told me if she did.
Actually, that reminds me of another review from The Witcher of a critic. One of the ones that I read, this is from New York Magazine. And this guy did not like it. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, New York Magazine Vulture. 10 things you won't see in The Witcher. This guy did not like it. Okay. One, Geralt, a.k.a. The Witcher, is an extremely large and hairy man who speaks in clearly enunciated sentences. He never grunts. He exhibits good manners, and he has a logical and well-articulated backstory. These are things you will not see in the show.
No, I'm here.
It says he never sleeps with the comely lasses he meets on his adventures. He's obviously being sarcastic.
Right.
An instructor at a witch school asks several young students to turn themselves into cyclopses, poke one another's eyes out, then strip naked and leap into a bottomless cavern. Everyone does it, and the lesson is deemed both useful and successful.
Okay, so
I don't get it.
Here's what I'm thinking. I don't get it. I can't say this for sure. This sounds like a book fan who is mad that the show is not like the book. And I saw that a lot with Game of Thrones.
The people that loved the book were disappointed by the show?
He's expecting different things, and he's not getting what he expects, and he's being mad. So, yeah, I hate those people.
One of his paragraphs is, this is a roundabout way of saying, I would have very much liked to describe several scenes from Netflix's new fantasy series, The Witcher. It's a show gasping to be described to death, to be sent out into the world with a crystalline image of what it looks, sounds, and feels like. And one of the other things he said that you will not see is there's an orgy that is essential to the narrative. So it seems like there's a lot of gratuitous nudity.
I didn't see a lot of gratuitous nudity in the first episode, but
I did see that in the one where he walks through the door and immediately there's a bunch of naked women just sort of walking around like zombies, picking fruit.
I'm a Game of Thrones fan, so there was a lot of that. But I honestly think that they make such a big deal out of the nudity. I mean, sex and violence out of these things. Maybe I'm honestly just so desensitized. That may very well be the case. But I, in general, don't care about it anyway. It doesn't strike any beats with me. So
you don't even notice it.
I do in context, but as far as like how it fits into the plot, but it doesn't like make me go ding, ding, ding. Oh my God, violence, nudity, whatever. It just doesn't do that to me.
I was already sort of on the precipice of, am I going to buy into this or not? And then he walks through the door and there's these beautiful naked women sort of walking around with baskets and their breasts, and it's all women. There aren't any dudes.
Let's hit the showers, goddammit!
Not that I want to see a man's ass, naked ass walking around. It seemed a bit gratuitous. You don't think so? That's part of that genre?
I don't mind the gratuity. It just As far as, like, I'm not offended, but I genuinely feel like it's silly. It makes me take the show or the movie less seriously. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, here we go. Here's some boobs. I take myself out of the story and start thinking about why did the producers or the directors choose to make this decision? And I start trying to think of, was this a good choice? And often it's not a good choice.
Well, because men like to see boobies.
Exactly. And I get that, and I'm fine with it. But I just kind of like, I disassociate with the planet that I'm supposed to be on during this show.
Gotcha.
You know, the nice thing about Game of Thrones was, because I'm a nerd about Game of Thrones, was that Game of Thrones did a lot of exposition. When they would show like a sex or a violent scene, they would often be exposing you to parts of the plot. If you're just putting boobs there so that you can have people doing word of mouth and buzz about it, then it's stupid. But frankly, maybe I'm a prude. I think it hurts shows and movies more than it helps. But I'm old.
Regarding zombie movies, I'm not a fan, but my feeling is that true zombie fans treat most zombie movies as spoofs. They're tongue-in-cheek. Granted, I have never seen AMC's The Walking Dead, which has been on for 10 seasons, so there's obviously a sizable audience for zombie fans. I'm including a very short YouTube clip at the bottom on the making of zombie sound effects, which are a big part of the cheese factor in zombie movies. Ironically, they use a lot of fresh vegetables for zombie sound effects. Seriously. The next time you crack open a bell pepper, do it very slowly and imagine a zombie movie or a zombie eating brains. Not only will you see what I mean, you'll probably lose your appetite for bell peppers. Regarding Jar Jar Binks, would it surprise you if that character became an icon for some group of snowflakes that feel outcast, whether it be millennials or LGBTQRSTUVs, or how about OK Boomers? Maybe we should adopt Jar Jar as the icon for our old outcast generation, right? Nobody cares what we say. We look embarrassing. Nobody really wants us around. But there we are, you know. Okay, what are we going to do about Grandpa? Instead, all our children and grandchildren will say, you know, what are we going to do with Jar Jar? Where's Jar Jar going to sit at the Thanksgiving dinner table? Who's going to cut up Jar Jar's meat for him?
He's embarrassing.
Good times. As for the cost of Game of Thrones episodes, my OP was right. In fact, Season 8 came in at a whopping $15 million per episode and made it the most expensive show in TV history. So we've looked at The Witcher as a Game of Thrones replacement. We'll check back in with my OP in a few weeks to see if she's continued to watch. Next episode on The Moron, we'll be talking to my old screenwriter friend who has a number of things to vent about, starting out with our military's new Space Force. Have you seen it on the camouflage uniforms? A number of people on social media have pointed out the irony of having camouflage uniforms for the Space Force, given that there's no brush or forest for the camouflage to blend into space. Not to mention the fact that we currently have no way to get an American into space, even if we wanted to. America! Go Team America! America! And we will see you next time on The Modern Moron.
It's the dream that we all share. It's the Why is it my responsibility to make you feel comfortable?